هذا كتاب أنزلناه مبارك فاتبعوه واتقوا لعلكم ترحمون.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Sorry for being late, but inshallah ta'ala this session is just a quick reminder inshallah that we wanted to since we finished Surah Al-An'am, alhamdulillah, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make it benefiting to each and every one of us. And to really try to get to know some of the benefits, the overall benefits that we learn from the surah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He, when it comes to matters of knowledge, the Quran, there's no end to the benefits that we can receive. And a big portion of this is what's in the heart of every believer. Meaning that the tafsir, and that's why you would find in the tafsir of the ulama, is mainly about getting the meanings, to understand the meanings correctly, and to be able to know exactly what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us. But then as far as the benefits are concerned, that it can be different from one person to the other. And the more that we recite the Quran, the more we will benefit from it on a personal level and matters of knowledge and things like this. So just as a reminder, some points to pay attention to, and I'm not sharing any screen and till we meet next time inshallah ta'ala. So it's basically the purpose of the surah, as we heard, is about the tawheed of Allah. The oneness of worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and warning against the tawheed, which is the worst thing ever, which is ash-shirku billah, the major and minor and everything that is related to the shirk of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And therefore, when we look at the surah from the very beginning, and that's why we need to, inshallah ta'ala, with memorizing it and understanding these meanings, and to keep on filling our hearts with these benefits, that everything when it comes to the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is only to be to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even the alhamd, the surah starts with alhamdulillah. So the haqq, or the rights of alhamd, the perfect praise, is only to Allah. That's the first point that we need to, gets us clearly when we see it in the beginning of the surah. That since the right of alhamd, which is the perfect praise, is only to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, therefore other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the alhamd is not to be attributed to them. They're not receiving the perfect praise, meaning what? They'll have weaknesses, they'll have deficiencies in their physical being, in their means of guidance, for example, in anything, in their power of knowledge, in their power of physical power, in guidance, in every matter. And therefore, it's not about what people might say or might see, but it's upon what's from Allah versus what's not from Allah. So everything is from Allah. So therefore, means of guidance and the purpose of our life and so on is to be taken from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nothing but the wahy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if people leave it to their own reasoning, it's very easy to distort and to corrupt one's reasoning and one's foundations of reasoning. So people would continue to debate and to go back and forth. And shaitan has his ways. But unless people would return the matter to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that is through the wahy from Allah. So even we're talking with the disbelievers, if they don't believe that Allah would reveal and have revelation to the human beings, then there's no common ground here. That means you go a step backward to prove this. And if they believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being the creator of the heavens and the earth, then He has to be the one that has the perfect names and attributes, because he's the creator of the heavens and the earth. And therefore, he would not leave his creation like this without any guidance. So what is the guidance that he chose, that he willed, subhanahu wa ta'ala? This is the revelation from Allah. So the revelation in principle. And then you show the revelation from Allah, that this is the evidence to prove that this is a revelation from Allah. Yes, they have the right to ask for this. But everything has to be attributed to Allah, because He is the one that deserves the perfect praise. And that's clearly stated. And anything other than Allah where people seek guidance from is of no benefit whatsoever. And therefore, the next point that you would see clearly also in the surah is the maw'idha, is the reminder, the admonition of those who turn away from the wahy, to warn them and to tell them that this is something that is they have to wake up from this ghafla that they're upon, or the al-i'rad, turning away from the wahy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is, as it's stated in the beginning of the surah, وَمَا تَأْتِيهِم مِّنْ آيَةٍ مِّنْ آيَاتِ رَبِّهِمْ إِلَّا كَانُوا عَنْهَا مُعْرِضِينَ. Every ayah comes to them from the Lord, they turn away from it. So as a result of that, they deny the truth. That's why one of the surah that has the most in it, the issue of at-takdhib, or belying the truth, is in Surah Al-An'am. So warning, admonition of those who deny the wahy from Allah, and to remind them of what happened to the nations before, and those who disbelieve and ungrateful to the favors of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they only harm themselves. And what's going to happen to them if they continue to be in that state at the moment of their death and afterwards. And it's not as people might think that they're going to be harmed in this worldly life. No, the believers are forbidden from this. It's all about warning about the punishment of Allah, what they're going to receive in the Day of Judgment. So having the right of praises to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and therefore to exalt the wahy from Allah, and warning and admonition to those who turn away from the wahy and the ayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Another important point, which is the third one, that the surah would show us, is the ways of the mushrikeen in not just turning away, but they make istihza', they make mockery of the truth, and making mockery of something to some people, it might affect them. But anybody can make mockery of anything. But does that mean that what they make mockery of is not the truth? So this is one of their ways. Instead of having facts or to talk about the haqq versus al-batil, but rather they just say things to make mockery of the truth, to establish their shirk, that they associate the partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Which is part of this i'rad, this turning away from the haqq that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed. The surah has so many adillah, and if we just focus on the different categories of adillah, the plural of dalil, evidences upon the tawheed, to establish the tawheed of Allah, that He subhanahu wa ta'ala is the only one worthy of worship. That by itself requires for a person to study and to go through the surah and to see the different evidences, and to even categorize them into different categories of how the surah, only this one surah, brings from the evidences of the most important thing. Once it's there, everything else becomes easy afterwards, even the obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because that's part of the tawheed of Allah. So this is the issue with the adillah, which is a fourth point that we can see clearly in the surah. Another, which is a fifth point that we also need to understand and to realize, that the haqq that we mentioned in the first one, that to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is also with matters of halal and haram. So the tawheed is the right of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the right of every detail as a result of the tawheed, the halal and the haram, the ibadah, everything has to come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If it's not from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then there's no validity to it. And this is what the final revelation makes the matter very clear and very straightforward. And for people to be united upon the revelation from Allah, the wahy from Allah. And the test from Allah to the human beings that either can be for them or against them is their aql, their ability to reason things. So either they use it to the reason to understand what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from them, or their reason will be wabal alayhim, will be a misery upon them when they would have principles that is not according to the wahy, the revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You would find commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to the believers, warning the disbelievers. So it's, for example, and this is number 6, if you look into the believers and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered them to turn away from the mushrikeen, to turn away with their hearts. That means you continue to give the da'wah, but to turn away with your heart from the mushrikeen, those who associate partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to stay away from sitting with those who indulge into the ayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in an evil way, in a negative way. And that's a practical warning, never to listen to those who say anything bad about the ayat of Allah, the wahy from Allah, unless it's someone, a special, specific individuals, those who would give da'wah and things like this. But the masses, the rest is to focus on worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and staying away from the ways of those who indulge into talking about the deen of Allah in a negative way, or making mockery of it and things like this. And that's why the believers, those who accept the da'wah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they are the ones that listen, they are the ones that hearts are alive. Because those who their hearts dead, they don't benefit from the admonition, and they don't accept the guidance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And therefore the taqwa of Allah, and it's all to the believers, it's all in the same point. But the taqwa, which is the right way to be obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's not about depriving yourself from some things that you desire. It's not about this. It's about depriving or withholding oneself away from the evil things that becomes a deterrent factor or a barrier between the person and one's purification, one's salvation, one's closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is what at-taqwa is. So for a person to reach the higher levels of goodness, they have to sacrifice. This is how worldly life is, and this is how the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. So at-tayyibat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala permitted. So at-tayyibat is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala stated as being pure. So the pure things is by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a good thing. So what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forbade upon the believers is what make them away from perfecting themselves. Prophets have been mentioned. So again, we're still that point of the believers, for the believers to see the favors of Allah upon them, that Allah revealed the Quran after the books that have been revealed before, and how this becomes the end of the revelation from Allah. So therefore it includes everything that was revealed before, so no need for the previous books, and that gives the solution to everything on the face of earth. People, when they keep on struggling with themselves and they think that they're upon something, the deen of Allah is one religion, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is one, and He sent messengers, and the messengers, all of them are brothers, as the Prophet ﷺ said. It's the problem is with the human beings. If they truly believe in the previous messengers, they would believe in all of them, and they would follow the final revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the minnah, the favor of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon this ummah, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the Quran, and the multiplication of the rewards and things like this, and to know the halal and from the haram, and to be upon what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us. So it has the warnings, it has the glad tidings, it has the details of matters of belief. And as you see how the surah ended with bringing things together. As it started, it brings it at the end all together with regards to the warning and the swift punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and warning against the ways of the disbelievers, those who in الَّذِينَ فَرَّقُوا دِينَهُمْ وَكَانُوا شِيَعًا, those who split it in their religion. How can you, meaning the believers, those who know the Quran, those who follow the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, how can they split in matters of their religion? How can they be sects like the nations before? And it's going to happen, as the Prophet ﷺ said, that why does it happen? It happens because of following the ways of the disbelievers before, hiding the truth, adding to the wahy that is not part of it. This is where the split comes into the ummah. But if everyone returns back to the pure religion that was present at the time of the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, which is feasible, and this is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protected it and made it preserved in such a way that only to follow the wahy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then they will be successful. That's why, one of the statements, and this is really something that we should remember also, you write it down too, inshallah. Shaykh al-Albani rahimahullah, he has a statement that he said that deen al-Sahaba, the deen of the Sahaba, and put aside all of these types of mockery that people might bring, but just for people to be truthful about this. And it's not a call for chaos in matters of deen. This is well-established deen with principles and the imma of the deen. The deen of the Sahaba, the religion of the Sahaba, not just in general terms as al-Islam, in details of it, the understanding of it, so that we don't fall into the split and sects and so on. هو الدين الصحيح. This is the sound religion. الذي يجب الرجوع إليه, that we have to all return to it. وليس دين الأحزاب والجماعات المتناحرة. And it's not the deen of al-Ahzab, these parties and sects and jama'at groups that are mutanahira, fighting against each other, disputing with one another. This is, everyone have their own thing and they're rejoicing and they're happy with what they're upon. But we need to go back to the deen of al-Sahaba. The deen of al-Sahaba is the deen of the imma of the deen. So it's not something that is a call for people to choose whatever they want. No, the deen of the imma of the deen. Imam Abi Hanifa, Imam Malik, Imam al-Shafi'i, Imam Ahmad and others. This is the deen of the Sahaba. The deen of the Sahaba is the proper aqidah, proper belief. Not the belief that is based on things that happened later with philosophy. The deen of the aqidah of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, and the names and attributes of Allah and the qadr of Allah. And nowadays, as if when people start giving these terminologies in a way, if it's to show the truth, that's fine, but it's in a way to show that this is a validity to the difference of opinions, no. Whether it's aqidah called athari or khalafi, or right, there should be always athari, nothing but athari. What's athari? Al-athar is the text, is the evidences, is the wahy from Allah. Is there any choice for a believer to refer back to anything other than the wahy from Allah? Whoever studies surah like Surah Al-An'am and all the surahs of the Quran, he won't turn to anything but al-athar. But al-athar, which is the evidences, and explained by the best generation ever brought to mankind, the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, the early generations of Islam. So this is, you see that clearly in the surah, in these principles, and because it exposes the ways of the people of Jahiliyyah and tafsil of what's muhkam and what's clear. So when you see how the surah at the end brings it together to stay away from what splitted the people. The Arab, for example, they were upon the deen of Ibrahim alayhi salam till someone introduced something new to them and they start splitting. The Bani Israel, they were upon the religion of Musa alayhi salam till someone deviated away from the truth, or once they disbelieved in Isa alayhi salam, things like this. So to hold fast, وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا, because the favor of Allah upon you, the Quran, and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and they're all preserved and well protected from any alteration, any differences as far as the text is concerned. So return back to this and follow the ways of the people of knowledge, which is the following of the truth that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed, and the favor of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala about the hasanat and the sayyat, and this is the deen. قُلْ إِنَّنِي هَدَانِي رَبِّي إِلَى صِرَاطٍ مُسْتَقِيمٍ دِينًا قِيَمًا مِلَّةَ إِبْرَاهِيمَ حَنِيفًا وَمَا كَانَ مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ. And then all of the life, because of the wahy, is to Allah. قُلْ إِنَّ صَلَاتِي وَنُسُكِي وَمَحْيَايَ وَمَمَاتِي لِلَّهِ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. My salah, my nusuk, my slaughtering, my life and death is all to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. لا شريك له. وَبِذَلِكَ أُمِرْتُ وَأَنَا أَوَّلُ الْمُسْلِمِينَ. And He has no partners, and by this I have been commanded, and I'm the first of the Muslims. So then, as we heard in the last verses, this will just saying, how can someone, the questioning of how can I seek other than Allah as my Lord and the Lord of all things, and every, so the meaning of the wahy, the importance of the wahy, and that you are going to be tested. So the surah ends with إِنَّ رَبَّكَ سَرِيعُ الْعِقَابِ وَإِنَّهُ لَغَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. Your Lord is swift in punishment, and He is the most forgiver, the most merciful, subhanahu wa ta'ala, after all of these clear evidences has been established in the surah. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the understanding and to be among those who worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us. Inshallah ta'ala, before even I tell you the next surah that we're going to go through, what's the manhaj in the tafsir, what I would ask each and every one of us, inshallah ta'ala, we want to, so that we can benefit from the surah, for those who have been attending and I listened to the entire tafsir of the surah, let's, on a personal level, read the surah, recite the surah, Surah Al-An'am, whether you're working on memorization of it, read it with understanding the meanings of it, inshallah ta'ala. And we'll meet, inshallah ta'ala, also tomorrow, going through some of the things specific in the surah, inshallah, or if you have any questions. So if you can go through the surah, inshallah, and see if you have any questions, go through your notes, see what's the things that is needed for us to act upon with regards to the application of the surah in our hearts and our actions, so that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy upon us, inshallah. طيب, we'll stop here, inshallah ta'ala, because of the time. And if you have any questions, I see here. طيب, the attendance code is taqwa and tawheed. Inshallah, just today I didn't put the video. Inshallah, next time we'll have the camera on, inshallah, for those who wants to watch, inshallah, and also the book to be shared, inshallah. طيب, barakallah fikum. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you. And if you have any questions, whether it's for the fiqh or for the aqidah or for the tafsir, please don't hesitate to send the questions, and we'll do our best, inshallah ta'ala, to answer them, inshallah. Barakallah fikum, inshallah. Sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala Muhammadin wa sahbihi wa sallam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.